if liberalism worked, we could just mail everybody a copy of the Constitution, and then it'd be great. Then we'd all be America.
We have nations all around the world that they are seeking and vying for our attention, our favor, and trying to influence our policies when we're doing the same in their countries.
They deserve to have a place to gather their people.
I think that's the core of the problem right there. Welcome to today's episode of The Young Patriots. I'm your host here, Devin Romero. We've got our co-host, Aiden MacArthur, and we've also got our guest today, Ben, remind me what your last name was again.
Waddell.
Waddell, okay. Ben Waddell. So go ahead, Ben, just tell us a little bit about what you're...
What I'm about politically, or...
Sure, yeah.
I figured I'd also give just an intro of like where I'm from, too.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I'm Ben. I was born in Salt Lake City. Then my family moved to New York, then Philadelphia, and then Portland, Oregon. So
I've been all over.
I've spent all of my life in cities.
You hit all the liberal cities, all the big ones.
Yeah. However, I'm not necessarily a liberal. My political journey has been up and down. I know we're going to talk about Israel today, but I always had a position on the Israel stuff even before October 7th.
Okay.
Yeah. But, all right, what else about me? I'm a student at BYU, Idaho, and I'm currently studying biomedical science.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, so I'm not actually in the humanities,
Frick,
which is interesting.
How far along in the major are you?
So this is my fourth semester.
Yeah.
So halfway through.
So you've taken, like, physics and chemistry and stuff?
Yes, I have. Actually, last semester I took
I
physics.
was a biomed major. I wanted to be a dentist, and I changed my major. I kept putting off my chemistry class because I did not want to take it. And I finally found something that worked for me, so I didn't have to. So kudos to you, dog.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't know about you, but those classes are tough.
Well, actually, I decided to stick with it. Originally, I was going to change to either political science or something like that, but I started to like my classes, so now I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, biology is definitely one of the toughest majors out there.
Dude.
Biology, engineering, things like that. Rocket science.
I'm glad I started biology because now marketing is a breeze.
Yep.
I don't have to learn stuff. No one's going to hire me now. Oh, whatever.
Okay. So with that intro, so like you said, we wanted to talk about Israel. Sounds like you wanted to talk a little bit about the political definitions to start.
Not necessarily definitions. You guys told me you were classical liberals, right?
No.
No.
We both identify as conservative.
Okay.
My pronouns are none.
Well, not.
I literally had a lady ask me that recently. She was setting up, I think it was my health insurance account through my parents' insurance. I guess I've never logged into their website. And this lady was like, what are your pronouns? And I was like, doesn't matter. And she's like, okay, it doesn't matter. And it was as if she selected.
Well, when I say,
I don't think she did. She was just saying repeating what I said.
When I say classical liberals, I mean, do you prescribe to classical liberalism?
How would you define that?
Okay, so can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Go for it, yeah.
Why are people different?
Dang, that's a good question.
People are different because their brains literally have different synaptic connections.
What do you think?
That's a pretty good explanation. I mean, we're not created to be the same. Equal value, yeah, but not to be the same exact kind of person.
So you would say people's differences mostly arise from not necessarily their environment, but their inherited characteristics.
It's a mix of both.
It's a mix
Definitely.
of both. Yeah,
the environment has a huge
it's
impact.
both.
That's probably the correct answer. And also, can I ask you guys another question?
Run it.
What exactly is a person? I know that's also a
This is
question.
AI.
This is cool.
Necessary.
No, he did say he was going to get philosophical, so I like this a lot.
Well, can I give kind of a thought experiment?
Yeah, I actually love these.
So, if I were to cut off my arms, I'm not sure how I would do that, but
I know where you're going with
if
this.
that happened, what would I still be there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if you cut off my legs too?
Yeah.
Okay. So my personhood isn't stored in my arms or my legs. Okay. What about when somebody dies? Are they still there?
Their body is, but
they
cease to exist in regard to their consciousness.
Yeah. So what remains of a person when they die?
Scientifically or religiously?
Both.
Scientifically, a corpse without a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Religiously, depends what religion. I think we can all agree here, being members of the Church of Jesus Christ, that the soul goes and lives in spirit paradise.
Yeah, your
Mhm.
spirit is what remains and is what truly is what makes you you. And some religions would believe like an essence, kind of like an energy. I mean, it's kind of similar concepts, but
Yeah.
there's some differences.
So have you guys heard the phrase, the deeds make the man?
Deeds make it. Oh, no, but I can kind of guess what that means.
I would argue that basically, yeah, what defines people are their choices. And we talked a little bit about why people are different, and that's due to their environment and their choices. But
Yeah.
I think that what defines a person is their choices, and that those choices are limited by certain things that people are actually born into. And this does relate to Israel. Specifically, this is why I'm kind of against classical liberalism. The idea, there's actually so much to break down here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to give like
Yeah, go for it. Don't
very
worry.
briefest.
Most people that
summary.
are watching this, when they hear liberal, they're just thinking a leftist, which there's actually very different definitions between a liberal and a leftist.
They're probably thinking blue-haired, pronoun screaming,
yeah.
silly pants.
There's very big differences. So that's why I want you to break that down.
Yeah, so there's differences. Liberalism originated with the philosopher named John Locke. And basically, liberalism is founded on empiricism. He's the guy that invented the idea that the only way we can know something for sure is by
Observing
using
it.
our five senses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what empiricism is.
Okay.
So empiricism is what science is based off of. So you have to be able to see, touch, smell, measure something like that in order to actually prove if something is real.
Yeah. And then liberalism essentially states that basically, how would you define it? I had the specific sentence in mind that I was going to use. Liberalism states that what was I going to say? I was going to say something specifically. Okay, so liberalism states that basically you exist in a state of nature. So let's go back, I don't know, 4,000 years. You're a caveman. What rights do you have? And he coined the terms life, liberty, and property. I don't think that's the proper view of the world. I think if people are not their agency, but their choices, then that means that a man is defined by his actions, and those actions, how good they are depends on how they affect other people. And so when a person is born into a state of nature, there is no such thing as somebody that exists before society. Not one person has ever been born where they don't already inherit some sort of role in their community. We could even go back to medieval times. Let's say a blacksmith had a son. What would that son's role be?
Probably a blacksmith.
Exactly. So he's born with an obligation and a responsibility towards other people. So I don't necessarily think that the best way to view people is to see them as basically just self-actualizing agents. I don't think that's the most important part about them. I think that it's what makes a person, but what I think defines, well, everybody has agency, so how do we know differences from one another? Well, choices. And so if people are born into a state of obligation towards other people, and liberalism seeks to remove that because it can state that these relationships are oppressive or destructive to people, then I think we get into a place where people start to act in a way that basically seeks to make man an island, where he's removed from his obligations towards other people, where I think that leaning in towards those obligations makes a person actually better, stronger.
Okay, so what are some examples that can help be a little more tangible for people?
Yeah, okay, so blacksmith role is an excellent example. Let's say you live in a medieval village, although this might not be completely historically accurate. Let's say you live in a medieval village, your father is a blacksmith. What role are you born into? You basically have to be a blacksmith.
Because he's going to train you. He knows his craft, and then you're just going to learn that. And you you don't have access to someone that knows other
Mhm.
skills.
Now, liberalism basically states that, okay, well, what if he doesn't want to do that? But that's not really like something that a person should do. That's not applying to all roles. Perhaps there is somebody that is a better blacksmith, but the responsibility and burden are still there. A person, that guy, when he's born to as the son of a blacksmith, actually has the responsibility to uphold that profession. And as liberalism seeks to basically, like I said, make man an island and remove his obligations from other people, then we end up with what is classical liberalism, which basically states that all relations between people have to be contractual. So there is no kinship with people of your nation, people of your race, people of your family. Rather, every interaction between people has to be contractual. And that's where we see like liberalism come forth, and libertarianism, where it basically states, okay, every relationship you have with the government's just inevitably going to do something bad. So let's dissolve the connection between you and the government. Let's dissolve the connection between you and your race, your kindred, your nation, yada, yada, yada.
Interesting. Okay, so and what are you proposing? So in the situation with the blacksmith, what you saying is what you're saying that you basically have an obligation to your society to fulfill the role that your father filled or that your mother filled, and you perpetuate that? Is there a name for that ideology, and why do you believe that's superior to liberalism?
I'm not sure if there's a name for it. If there is, I don't know.
It's probably tribalism, if I were to guess.
Yeah,
A little
bit? Maybe, I don't know. I think liberalism, as invented by John Locke, we have to put him in this context here. 1600s England. The old empires in Europe at this time are considered oppressive because basically the relationships that were predetermined that people were born into were not the best situation.
Mm-hmm.
We can look at exactly how happy would you be if you were a French peasant in the 18th century. Probably not super happy. That's not a preferable arrangement. And so liberalism, I think, originally existed as an economic tool for Northwestern Europeans to basically enable themselves to better their situations. I don't think the universalist definition of liberalism works. I think that people are just different, and there's no way to make someone necessarily function under liberalism if their culture doesn't have some sort of connection to it already.
So you're kind of just saying some cultures are not capable of fostering liberalism or operating under liberalism.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're not saying liberalism is bad. You're just saying...
I think it has a jurisdiction.
Okay. That's fine. I think that's fair. So what you're dealing with here is you've got, for instance, we are not a collectivist in society, but in China, they're very collectivist. What other people do or say or how they're impacted matters a lot in China, because it's not just about you, it's about the collective. And that's just kind of been soaked into their culture for I don't even know how long. Mm-hmm. But for us, we're very individualistic. We're very like, okay, individual rights. We're, it doesn't matter if my parents say I shouldn't do A, B, or C. I'm going to go and do that, mm-hmm. which kind of does sound like that classical liberalist liberal.
Can I raise an not necessarily objection? Can I give you an example of
Sure.
how I think people are naturally tribal? Although I'm not sure if that's the right word to describe it.
I would describe it that way. I think that's fair.
How do people define themselves in their Instagram bio? Like, what's the first things they put?
The groups that they belong to.
Yeah, it'll say like first and foremost Christian, and then husband, then father. Those are great things, but the reason they're great is because they strengthen our connection and obligation towards other people. So, or in other words, your role as a husband doesn't matter. I mean, you're married. Your role as a husband, it's not that it doesn't matter. Sorry, that sentence wasn't complete. It doesn't matter if you don't have a wife. Or in other words, one of the most important parts of your identity is defined by how you interact and relate to another person.
Just like how if you're identifying as a Christian, it's worthless if you're not living those principles. If you don't have Christ in your life, if that's not a relationship you actually have with Christ, then you're kind of speaking vain words into the air.
So I think that God has actually ordained groups for a specific reason. I think God wants us to be part of groups. Now, the most essential one that everybody can agree with is we're all part of a family. And I don't mean like eternal family, but I mean like your specific family. So everybody.
Because you're talking about the nuclear family. You're talking about at the smallest level, your parents, your siblings.
So people inherently understand that it's not that if you have a child, that child matters more than other children. It's to whom that child matters that is important.
Because you're that child's parent, or you're that person's child.
And I think what has happened in Western society is we have basically seen ourselves as the stewards of the world. What we're trying to do is get everybody to join us at the end of history, where every man is an island. And that's not a compelling story.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And that's not something that people want to fight for.
So importing capitalism, importing democracy, which we're not, by the way, but importing any of these types of beliefs that we associate with into another culture may have devastating effects on the culture.
Yeah, I think we could just, I want to eventually get to talk about Israel. This does relate to them.
Yep.
But if liberalism worked, we could just mail everybody a copy of the Constitution and, then it'd be great. Then we'd all be America.
Can someone put that on a shirt?
Mail a copy of the Constitution to every person?
Yeah, like just what you said there, that was a really profound statement.
Well, I think it's that people are defined by their context. When a child is born in Brazil, what is important to his identity is the fact that he is from Brazil. That's what defines him. Putting him in that context is important. And I think when we remove ourselves from context because we're trying to basically end all obligations that human beings have to one another because they might eventually become an abusive relationship. I don't just mean personally, but like it could be between the people in the state, all those things. I think that when we seek to dissolve those unions, we actually end up in a worse spot than if we desire to strengthen the unions.
Interesting.
The unions that people have.
So, and could you segue that into the Israel situation? So we're wanting to talk about Israel on a perspective with the right, because the right now is very conflicted. You've got, different people, very famous talk show hosts and whatnot, podcasters, that they're saying, break away from Israel. We want absolutely nothing to do with them. And then you have people that are like, no, Israel to the end. And there's people in the middle. So what are your thoughts on this whole conflict? And you had a list of topics you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, so this is basically where the core of maybe tribalism comes in. It's us as Americans, where do we view our obligations? And is it first to America? And then how does Israel come into that? Yeah. Is Israel part of our family? Are they our friend? What exactly should our relationship be with them? Should it be purely contractual? Do we have some sort of tie with them that we are born into as Americans? Or, which actually I don't think that's the case. So basically, I think that Israel has currently an abusive relationship with the United States, and that because of our differences, we don't actually have an obligation necessarily to Israel, because I don't think we're born into any sort of union with them. I think when the United States first came into being, Israel had nothing to. I get Israel didn't exist at the time, but because it was so far away geographically and so distant culturally, there's basically no reason that when an American is born, they should have some sort of loyalty or obligation towards Israel. We can talk about whether or not they're useful allies. That's a valid discussion. But I don't think any American has an innate responsibility to Israel like we do to Europe, which I see as our brother civilization. We do have an obligation to Europe because all of our ideas come from them.
Do you think that we still have that obligation based on what you've been talking about?
To Israel?
No, to Europe.
Yes.
Just briefly.
Yes. I feel like Europe deserves more things from the United States than Israel. And yeah, that's kind of just determined on the fact that we have the same cultural lineage.
Yeah, we have the same lineage. We're definitely diverging right now. If you were to look at it like an evolutionary thing, they're going a different way to becoming a different species currently.
Are you just talking about immigration?
No, I'm talking about on politics, just as a nation and how they govern. I'm not referring to them as a people. I'm saying Europe and how they govern. It's becoming a completely different animal compared to what we are and how we run our country.
But we have to remember that all of the philosophical priors to the United States come from Europe.
For sure.
More specifically, England. Like, have you read the English Bill of Rights?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's an excellent document. If you read it, you're like, you will recognize that it's basically very similar to America's founding documents.
It inspired our founding, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more than it inspired our founding. I think it's a direct
reference,
predecessor towards the United States Constitution, and I think our obligations to Europe are much bigger than they are to Israel. But we can talk more specifically about Israel.
That's fine.
Yeah. Do you have any questions about my positions on Israel? Or
no,
do you
go
want
ahead
me
and
to just
give your first point.
Okay, so I came up with a list of five things where I think Israel is basically putting us in a spot where our relationship with them is not so good. And so there's a couple other things I want to talk about, which is that these are other. Sorry.
It's fine.
These are other philosophical prerequisites for my positions on Israel. One, the purpose of a nation state is to be the representative of the nation on the world stage. Second, national sovereignty is the right of the people to determine their own destiny. It is self-evident. So in other words, I don't have to prove that people should deserve national sovereignty. I think it's just self-evident. And most people would agree with that, I think. Fourth, people have obligations they are born into. This includes the obligation to one's own people. And I mean that ethnically. A nation, and then the fourth one, a nation state should guarantee the demographic security of its people. And then number 5, Jewish identity no longer lacks a nation state. And so I have 5 points that proceed from that. So the first one is Israel's connections in the Western world are deep, and that's a problem.
Okay. I think we should talk about that for a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
What are the effects of Israel's connections to America?
With the United States,
yeah.
It interferes with the United States to act on its own behalf. So in other words, when we interact with Iran, we are not able to just say, what does the United States need / want? Instead, we have to consider other parties, which we don't actually have an obligation to.
So it kind of convolutes the peacemaking and negotiation and diplomacy process.
Specifically right now with Iran.
Okay.
I think something that's important to know also is that Israel, because originally I was thinking, okay, what are some obligations what are interests that the United States has in the Middle East that we should pursue that the Israelis could cooperate with us on? And originally I was thinking of, well, obviously the United States and other nuclear countries don't want nuclear weapons to continue to get to every country.
Because that's a threat that reaches us.
And so I don't think it would be good if Iran got a nuclear weapon. The problem is Israel is not signed on to any sort of I'm not sure what it's called, but basically they haven't agreed in an international agreement with the rest of the world to limit nuclear proliferation.
Yeah, it'd probably just be a nuclear agreement.
Yeah, so there's no way to know, at least diplomatically, that Israel is not interested in Iran having a nuclear weapon for just the purposes of more nuclear weapons are bad. Rather, they have a personal interest, and then because of their influence in the United States, that means that they are pursuing something that might not be in the best interest of the United States. And then they're also using the power of the United States to get that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being the case. I definitely am against the concept of, with, I think it's APAC. Apparently they're not registered under a foreign organization, a foreign national. Yeah. So I'm definitely in favor of them needing to register as a foreign organization. And the same for all the other organizations that currently that doesn't apply to or hasn't been enforced. But also, I think it's a conflict of interest when you have people that are allegiant to Israel. Like, did you mention dual citizenship? Was that something that you were talking about?
No, I didn't, but that perfectly applies to this idea. A lot of Jewish people in the United States, both secular and non-secular, although they don't necessarily politically like Israel as much. I believe the polling data is supportive of that. Something that is important to note is that they still feel an obligation towards it because it is now the homeland of the Jewish people. And so it's kind of impossible to talk about Israel without at least talking a little bit about Jewish identity. Jewish identity is extremely tribal.
Do you think that we have a connection to Israel through the Judeo-Christian origins of our country?
No. I have some quotes by general authorities that I can use, but we could just break it down on pure base level. Why would we have an obligation to Israel? A legitimate question. What would you guys think?
The answer that comes to my mind is via scripture and I forget which scripture it is. It's basically saying that he who upholds my people, him will I also uphold. Okay. And it's not in regard to financial consideration, and it's not in regard to political authority and acquiescence, but it is in regard to a level of like the Holocaust, of we need to prevent that from ever happening again. Like Jewish people as a culture have been targeted for many, I would say millennia. There's been multiple Holocausts that people don't realize. I think they said there's been 8
what do you mean?
Over the course of Jewish culture.
Wait, what do you mean by multiple Holocausts? Do you mean like pogroms in Europe?
I'm not sure. That's just what I've heard, is that there's been several Holocausts. It's probably including like the Roman desecration of Jerusalem and how they slaughtered Jews, they scattered them abroad. So it's probably stuff like that, and including like Babylonian takeover of Jewish land. So that's what I think they're talking about. Obviously, of all of those Holocausts, the most recent Holocaust was the most significant and the most deadly. I mean, with 6 million Jews being killed, many more starved, and many suffered. It was millions and millions of people that suffered. Yeah. So I think on that level, that's where I'm pro-Israel. Is I don't want more targeting of Israeli people, like the Jewish people. Okay. The government, I don't. I'm kind of with you on that. I don't see a huge benefit to us as a nation for supporting Israel, the nation, but I do believe in protecting Jewish culture and protecting Jews from those who seek to destroy them.
Okay, where do you see that obligation lined out in Scripture?
It's just that. It's just a matter of the Lord's covenant people were the Jews, and of course, yes, they did. They did execute their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and they didn't know that that's who it was. But I do still think that they are a covenant people, and that God has extended that covenant outside of Judaism and extended it to Christians as well.
Well, my question would then be, if the covenant is open, then what makes Jewish people what makes us have a specific obligation to help the Jewish people as opposed to other Christians? So, for example,
you're saying us, members of the Church of Jesus Christ. What separates our responsibility
as Americans? I mean, we can talk about what it would mean as a member of the church.
Well, from what perspective are you?
He said Americans.
Americans.
Yeah, as Americans.
Okay. He said as opposed to other Christians. I was just clarifying.
So you're saying, are we prioritizing Jews over Christians? Is that what you're basically making?
I think that the foreign influence in our government makes it pretty clear that yeah, we kind of are.
Okay.
I do think that Jewish people in the West are, how should I phrase this? I do think that Israel is given special benefits that are outside the obligations that we actually have to them, and I think that is being caused by Jewish influence in upper echelons of American society. One example you mentioned was AIPAC.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is it, I guess one way that my thought process runs too is extreme political Islam seeks to destroy Israel, and they call them the little Satan, and then they simultaneously call us the great Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in reference to our size. So there's, Satan is their enemy. That's what the term Satan means. It means enemy.
Who says that?
Extreme Islam.
Okay.
Islamic terror groups, they refer to Israel as little Satan.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree that anti-Zionist sentiments from the third world also are not conflated, but go hand in hand with anti-Western sentiments.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's because they themselves are misunderstanding the proper relationship between Jewish and Christian civilization, as opposed to them necessarily identifying something that is accurate.
But even though that might be the case, practically speaking, I mean, if you think about it, something that they've talked about is that Israel's a one-bomb country, meaning you drop one nuclear weapon on Israel and then all the people are massacred in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that is actively talked about in terror groups, and they would love to get their hands on a nuclear device so that they could carry that plan out.
I am against further nuclear development, particularly by Islamic countries.
For sure.
But I don't think that Jewish people or Jewish civilization and Christian civilization has always gone hand in hand. You mentioned something about Judeo-Christian values.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are things that necessarily conflict between both Jewish theology and Christian theology.
By definition.
That makes Judeo-Christian alliances essentially not possible.
Judeo-Christianity is Christianity.
Well, Judeo is referencing Judea, the Jews. So it's a combination term of Jew and Christian.
Yeah, but Christianity is Christianity. If you believe in Christ, you're a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the whole idea of, but Judeo-Christianity, no.
I think it's inherent in the fact that Christ was a Jew. It's what they did in Germany. They literally had to write out the fact that they wrote it out of the Bible that Christ was a Jew.
Okay, yeah. Can we go back to a couple of things you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned Judeo-Christian values, and then you also mentioned that in Scripture, Christians are obligated to help out God's covenant people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as basically a divine obligation placed on the Christian populace to advocate for, Jewish, placed on the Christian populace to advocate for Jewish national identity?
What do you mean by Jewish national identity?
Specifically, a state of Israel. Do you think that when God is saying we owe,
I think it's their land.
I
think God gave them that land,
yeah.
And I think that's why they're struggling for that land. And I think there's a reason that.
Do you think that can I ask you one clarifying question?
Yeah.
Do you think that the right to that land given to the 12 tribes of Israel, that obligation still holds today?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me scripture to support that?
I just don't have any scripture that says that ceased.
Well, we're told to help gather Israel, and I know within the Church of Jesus Christ, that's mostly applied to sending out missionaries and stuff, because the tribes have been separated, they've mixed, and we're essentially all part of the tribe now.
I could see it being the case that I'm wrong on that, but that's what I see.
Could I give you...
I didn't want to say something real quick.
We're told to gather Israel, and, the church does its part in that, but how do we gather, where do we gather them? Because eventually it's going to be a literal gathering. How do we gather them if there's no place for them to meet?
I don't think it's bound to geographic location, though.
Not only geographic location, but we are three-dimensional people. We need a place to go. Yeah. And I think Israel the geographic location was given to them.
That's
so I
fair.
think they deserve to have a place to gather their people.
I think it's kind of the difference between prior to Israel being reformed in the 1950s and when they were in Germany and all this stuff. You know, there were a lot of weaknesses they had because they couldn't form their own nation. They are a culture. They are an ethnicity. And so they need a place, and they really don't have much land. Like the fact that the little sliver of land they do have is being contested is kind of sad. I mean, people make arguments that there were Palestinians there when they arrived, you know, and so that's the conflict.
Doesn't change the fact that they deserve a place to be. I mean, I don't remember Israel being super terroristic and against everyone around them prior to them being attacked.
Yeah, I think the rhetoric since October 7th has been that Israel is the aggressor. And I think a large part of that is due to them just being the bigger kid.
That's when everyone
playground.
started paying attention because they metaphorically dropped the bomb, and then everyone sees it. Oh my gosh, Israel's doing this and that. Well, let's remember the last 70 years of Palestine refusing agreements to the land with Israel. So,
which is part of the reason I believe. Again, I could be uninformed on this, so just take that with a grain of salt. But that's why I believe that there's been more and more land of Palestine that Israel has taken up is because of conflicts, wars, negotiations, agreements. So I guess one thing I should say is I don't think America should be involved in that process except to broker peace, because I think we do benefit from peace being in the Middle East.
Okay, so you think we do have an obligation to basically play like, or not play, but rather we do have an obligation to the Middle East to say, hey,
let's play fair.
Work it out.
Right, and that is solely on an argument of national security. Because I think when they're cooperating, I think we actually have less likelihood of us being attacked. That's all I'm saying. I don't think we should be in the weeds of Israel gets to be here, Palestine gets to be here. I don't think that's our business. I think that's outside of our purview and outside of our jurisdiction. But what is in our jurisdiction is our national security, which is fostered by peace in the Middle East.
That's
true. When we look
fostering.
at it with for lack of a better word, a selfish perspective, then we're not picking a side. We're not adding to the contention. We're saying, you guys need to chill out because you're kind of freaking us out.
It's self-preservational.
I do think that Israel specifically, I think supporting them is actually detrimental to our national security.
How does that play out?
Specifically as it relates to nuclear power, they are the only nuclear power in the Middle East, for better or for worse. So I guess practically speaking, then it would be a good idea to kind of be like, hey, you're the guy with bombs over there, so maybe we should work with them.
Oh, national security on the extent that we don't want them to hit us.
No, not. I don't think Israel about the United States.
No, I don't think so either.
National security. I think that the United States doesn't really have a lot of interest in the Middle East. I think our biggest interests in the Middle East, are with Iran, and I could see how we could cooperate with the Israelis on that. Except for the Israelis don't necessarily just want Iran to not obtain a nuclear bomb. They also want regime change, which I think is outside of our interest and our purview.
I agree with that.
And I actually think it violates something which I agree with. You guys were talking about how basically Jewish people deserve a state, right?
I would say so. I think that's fair to say. Which I would say is the same for the Palestinians.
Do you think that's a universal thing? Do you think that every single people deserves a place on the world stage?
I think
so. It's kind of that John Locke. So maybe in a sense you're right that we do kind of fall under that classical liberal belief system, if that's how you as how you defined it. I do believe that people have a right to life, liberty, and property. And so in that sense, yes, I do acknowledge that not all nations, not all cultures and peoples have had the opportunity or the blessing to be able to have a land that corresponds to a home they can reside in. For instance, there's an Asian culture known as the Hmong people. And I don't know if they've ever had a nation that they could call home, but they are still a culture nonetheless. And there's quite a few Hmong communities in I think it's HMONG, how it's spelled. There's quite a few Hmong communities in America.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to think that they don't have, there's no, like you think it's Mongolia. It's not. Mongolia, that's Mongols. That's a completely different ethnicity, apparently.
So you would agree that groups have rights specifically to a nation state. People as a group are deserving just because they exist.
I would say so,
deserving of some form of political representation.
I think
on
that's
the
Even
world
after Germany pulled their stunt with the Holocaust, I mean, they still, despite that, not because of it, they have the right to a nation, and we put a lot of restrictions on them too.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're gonna be a bully in the world, yeah, you deserve restrictions.
Which
So
I don't think that's America's place to have even
So
done
in
that.
other words, groups do have rights, and violation of those rights by other groups is bad.
I would say so.
Okay,
Yes.
well, the American people have the right to a nation state that represents them and them only. And Israel's current relationship with us limits that. And so even if we could argue that Israeli influence in the United States government is working towards an end that we can get behind, based on principle alone, I think it violates our national sovereignty. So even if they're currently influencing the United States and public opinion to basically say, hey, we're going to stop Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. Even if the American people agree with that and want that to be done, that doesn't mean that the United States, that the American people aren't being derived of a government that represents them fully and only.
Deprived.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
I still think that.
does that make sense?
I think the exception is the Middle East. If you were to pick any other country, I mean, maybe you could make the claim against Russia and China. I mean, they did very viciously proliferate communist ideology throughout the world. I mean, that's what happened with Cuba and Venezuela.
But do you agree those things are bad because they violate people's national sovereignty? So in other words, the reason those things are bad is because groups are deserving of a certain thing, specifically a nation state, which represents them on the world stage. And because you said communist ideology has been proliferated in South America and as well as in East Asia, that because of the proliferation of those ideas, it actually limits the group's rights to have a nation state that represents them. I think Israel is doing the same thing to the United States because of powerful Jewish American billionaires in the upper echelons of our society. We know that money is being funneled from the United States taxpayer to Israel. Mm-hmm. That's an abusive relationship. It should basically be up to the American people to decide where that money goes. If we decide to basically say, hey, all of us, all Americans, we're going to get behind sending $1 bajillion to Israel, then that'd be okay. But because there are Jewish people in the United States that have an ethnic interest in perpetuating the country of Israel, then there's a conflict of interest with citizens who actually have an obligation that precedes their obligation to America.
I'm in favor of that. So I think so this is the thing. This is where my thought process goes. I think we've gotten so fed up with the system as Americans that we are lashing out on Israel. I don't think it's just Israel. We're giving money to all these countries in Africa. We're giving money to countries in Europe. We're giving money to countries elsewhere. And I think that's the core of the problem right there, is we have nations all around the world that they are seeking and vying for our attention, our favor, and trying to influence our policies when we're doing the same in their countries. That's where I want the issue to stop. I don't care if it's just Israel. I want it to be across the board.
Yeah, but
I think we should make it to where people do get to decide where their money goes instead of it being the government decides and you have no say. So I agree with that. And I would say if the people vote for Israel to get money, then yeah, they get it. And if we vote that we don't want them to get money, there's nothing we've done wrong there.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. The problem is that Israel is the biggest recipient of military foreign aid. So it's not necessarily that I disagree with you that
They just get the most attention because they're the bigger problem.
They do get the most attention. And so I feel like if we are going to go down the list of, okay, where should we stop sending our money because it's not in our best interest, then Israel would be the first one, just based on expense alone.
Do you think if political and extreme Islam destroys Israel and killed every last Jew, which, by the way, I'm concerned that we are entering a new era where we will see, or at least be faced with, another Holocaust because of the anti-Semitic sentiments that have been propagated. Again, I'm fine with people talking about these types of things, but there are people that have been getting so angry about this stuff that they're actually beginning to become compassionate and considering Hitler's side of the argument.
But we got to consider where this comes from. Who exactly is the most? You talked about Islam and how it's basically the number one force, I would argue, on the world stage for anti-Jewish sentiment.
For sure.
Europeans, I get it, like Europeans and Christians, we've not always necessarily gotten along with Jewish people in the best terms. However, I believe ever since like the Enlightenment, like the Jews were let back into the UK in the 1750s. I might be wrong on that, but they were let back in like 300 years ago. Jewish people have been in the United States for quite some time too.
Yeah.
It's not that they haven't necessarily made cultural contributions or that Europe has always treated them kindly, but we do have a relationship with them that is, I would say, sometimes mutually beneficial, and it's more so than the relationship we have with European Christianity has had with Islam. I think something to keep in mind is that a lot of anti-Zionist sentiment in the United States is not coming from European Christians in the United States. The people with the most anti-Semitic attitudes in the United States are essentially foreigners. So in other words, when you say you see anti-Semitism rising in the United States,
it's because of foreign people.
It's not that Americans are becoming more anti-Semitic. What it is we've imported a foreign conflict. I also think that violates our national sovereignty.
I'd agree.
I think that Islam's prevalence in the West, more specifically in Europe, I don't think it's as big a problem in the United States.
Yep. People, by the way, don't realize. People don't realize how big of an influence Islam is in Europe.
I believe it's like, is it 10% of Germany is Muslim? It's a pretty bad number. It's too high. But basically, the problem is at the end of the day, liberalism, or at least unrestrained liberalism, or liberalism without a Christian ethic. So the reason these Muslims are coming into European countries or countries derived from Europe is why? Because we see ourselves as now having an obligation towards the world, as opposed to first having an obligation towards our own people.
I agree, that's a problem.
So this is where the issue stems from. It stems from us. I actually wrote a little paragraph about it on my phone. Let me pull it up.
Well, while you're pulling it up, if Islam was to successfully destroy all of Jerusalem and all of Israel, do you think there would be any negative impact to our country?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
If extreme Islam wiped out Israel off the face of the map and was able to successfully kill all or most Jews, what impact would that have on our nation?
Our nation?
Right.
Well, the second largest population of Jewish people is in the United States. So it wouldn't have an effect on Americans, but it would have an effect on Jewish people in the United States.
Okay.
And I also do think that it would be a violation of national sovereignty of the Jewish people to remove their nation state from them, and especially in such a violent and depraved way.
So I make a false equivalency then when I think if we allow extremists in Islamic countries to take over Israel, that they will be encouraged to then take on America. I mean, they're already kind of doing that.
I understand that. Yeah, Islam has defined itself essentially in opposition to Christendom for the past
1,000 years.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
So I wouldn't necessarily disagree, but I think you also have to remember that even if we have a more beneficial relationship with Jewish people and Jewish civilization, that doesn't necessarily mean we owe them an obligation more than we do to the Muslims.
Yeah, I'm open to that concept. I'm open to that.
Yeah, does that kind of make sense?
It makes sense. Whether or not I'm, in full agreement is still in the air, but I see where you're coming from. It's logical.
What was the paragraph you were going to read?
Yeah. The West's acceptance of liberalism has made us bitter and stupid. We now live in a world where we have decided to get everyone to join us at the end of history. This has resulted in the rise of a particular group of people who, driven by their ethnic grudges towards Europeans, have made it their life goal to completely quell the people who have ever threatened them. They fund all of this by capitalizing on the vices pursued by commoners in the West. If our systems were more robust, if we had excluded those who wished to take advantage of us, then we would be okay. Liberalism has made us forget our bonds to one another, and as a result, we are now destroying ourselves. Israel is not an outcrop of Western civilization, but is another group in a strange land. I think that, there's a couple of statements in there that I didn't get to back up all the way, but basically I think the point holds, which is that Jewish people, although we have a more positive relationship with them than we do with Islam, I do think that their relationship with Christendom is ultimately more abusive than the common man in the West might think.
Yeah, and I'm not for us as a nation. Like, I'm not for us making beneficial treatment that doesn't benefit us as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we should be America first. I think that's the best way I could put it. America first. That doesn't mean America only, but we should look at, like what Trump's been doing, is what benefits us. Does NATO benefit us? Does it benefit us to be part of that? And that's something that is up for debate right now. It used to just be, yeah, it does. Now I'm not so sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to look at those things, and people will tell us, well, we need to stay in NATO because we need to benefit Europe. It's like, well, if we aren't benefited by it.
I do think, though, we have more of an obligation to Europe than
that's
Jewish
what you've mentioned.
It's not that Jewish people have not, we've been intertwined with them for a while. And when I say we, I mean European Christendom.
Mm-hmm.
We've been intertwined with them for a while, but I feel like currently Jewish influence in the United States and in the West is not the most beneficial relationship.
Interesting.
I feel there's a couple of examples I could give. I think the best one is Miriam Adelson. Do you know?
I have not heard of it.
Miriam Adelson is an AIPAC donor, and she also donated to Trump's campaign. She's very influential in politics. Her and her now deceased husband built their money off of basically building a bunch of casinos. So in other words, the vice in the United States is being used to fund a violation of our national sovereignty. And so, like
which
I said,
that's happening all the time.
Mm-hmm. And so
it seems like a pretty solid business plan to me.
It's effective.
Selling vice. Another thing is that the pornography industry.
I was just gonna say, like, what's the biggest vice on the freaking planet?
And I think we can agree that pornography is really bad, but that vice is being taken advantage of financially, and by and large, that's going outside the country, and the most of it is going to Israel.
Really? The pornography industry, really?
Yeah, can I give you an example?
Sure. Okay. I've never heard this before.
So actually, the majority shareholder of the company OnlyFans donates a lot of money to
really?
the IDF. Yeah.
The IDF?
The IDF, Israeli Defense Force.
Yeah.
Specifically through a website. Actually, anybody can donate to the Israeli military. So if you really want, you can go to FIDF, Friends of the Israeli Defense Force, and you can just, I don't know,
I'm confused. The largest shareholder of OnlyFans, they pay money to OnlyFans. They also pay money to Israel?
No, largest shareholder of OnlyFans, meaning he owns 75% of the company.
Meaning he owns the company.
Like
he
stocks.
owns OnlyFans.
Yeah. He didn't invent it.
No, but he owns it, essentially.
Yeah, and that money goes to Israel. And so something we got to remember is that, okay, why would a Jewish person necessarily want to take advantage of money from a pornography company
That's
and send it
crazy.
to Israel. It's like you said, they have an ethnic interest in protecting their own,
Yeah.
right? They don't want another Holocaust to happen. They believe that basically Israel is the best political project to prevent that. Now, this guy that I'm talking about, I don't have the name his name off the top of my head, but he's not actually a religious Jew. He's secular. And so his interest is one of ethnicity. It's not on religious lines. And basically, he, like every other Jewish person across all civilizations, across all times, has basically thought to himself, okay, this is really bad. We kind of keep getting trashed everywhere we go.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the best political project we have on the world stage to represent Jewish interests.
They're doing their Israeli interests first.
But the problem is that it's fueled by vice. Or in other words, it's fueled by the consumption of pornography. That's a bad thing.
It's one of the avenues that's happening. It's not their sole income source. But yeah, I see what you're saying. They're just saying Americans are sinful and we're going to take advantage of that sin, make money off of it, and then bring it back home.
And so I think that like this is all going to come back to the main point, which is liberalism, which is if we seek to basically make man an island, then vice can be permitted because it's part of his agency. And if the ultimate thing we don't want to violate is people's agency, as opposed to what we want to prevent is sin, then we have our priorities mixed up and we end up basically allowing this stuff to, like, a gambling CEO and a pornography and a shareholder of a pornography company is donating to Israel.
No, I'm very much in favor of banning these types of vices, gambling and prostitution, which in most places it is illegal, not in Nevada.
I would argue pornography is digital prostitution.
Yes,
Yeah.
No,
it
100%.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
The reason people don't see the same thing as what it is, and just accept that is baffling to me. But yeah, pornography should be banned. The fact that it's protected under privacy, what?
But
What privacy is there in the people that are sexually exploited to get those images and
Why is
videos?
prostitution legal but pornography isn't?
Yeah,
It's
but another thing
insane.
you have to understand is that online internet pornography is a cultural invention of many secular Jews, specifically in the United States. That is important to note. And the reason why it's specifically done by secular Jews is because they don't necessarily have the strict moral code that would also make them be against those vices as Orthodox Jews would.
That's crazy.
But they have an ethnic interest in securing their own. And so what they seek to do is subvert Christendom because it provides them more security. Or at least they think it does. I think that it's the contrary, that a stronger Christian society actually supports Jewish national sovereignty more.
Is this what went wrong with George Soros?
How does he fit in?
Maybe. He's secular, I believe.
Is he a Jew?
Yes, he is Jewish.
Oh.
He's Jewish, but he's not practicing, and he
but
has
remember,
a ton of
who are
money.
his parents? Who are his parents? His parents are Holocaust survivors. So that means that
he actually
Shout out
helped.
them.
He helped people that the Germans were looking for get found.
Yeah.
He was a sellout. And he actually is proud of that. I think he was on a 60 Minutes interview, and they asked him, "So, do you regret helping the Nazis?" And he says, "No, I do not regret this." And I'm like, "Wow."
Yeah.
He said he smiles when he thinks of those memories.
So at least
Wow,
in
he's
that
a
case,
D-bag.
he's
It's
self-interest. He's self-interested. But I think I basically already said it, which is that this universal liberalism, unrestrained by a Christian ethic in the West, is destroying us. And as it relates to the state of Israel, I think that's only one part of the whole story.
Could you read off your other points too? I don't think you got to all 5.
Yeah, I mean, we
talked
have
about
to
some
go
of them.
through all of them.
We'll just briefly, because we are running out of time, but we'll briefly talk about some of our thoughts.
Okay, yeah. let's see, Israel connection.
Because you had 5 points,
The
insane.
Israeli military relies on money from the United States to function.
which I'm fine with cutting that off. It's the military aid that I don't agree
that's
with.
just kind of
It's-
like a fact anyway. This is a short one. Israel has no connection to the biblical concept of Israel.
Yeah.
I know that I'm not.
That's
sure
probably
if
the
you
one I
agree with
disagree.
that.
I disagree with that one on the most, honestly.
Yeah. The Israeli military is immoral in their actions.
I
Then
wouldn't know.
Israel does not benefit U.S. interests in the Middle East. So I think we covered all the
We did kind of cover those main
bases,
ones.
except for the Israel has no biblical.
Yeah, can we talk about
connection.
that just for like
Well,
3
what do you,
minutes?
is this
Yeah, we could
a
talk-
point that you're making?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that the biblical concept of Israel now is the church. So what once was the nation is now the church.
I see. So Israel, kind of like what I was saying, Israel has been scattered so much so that the tangible Israel has now spread to just everybody.
You believe
The
the new and
church. Well-
everlasting covenant has essentially replaced the old covenant.
And I have a quote from Bruce Armin Conkey. I can read that if you want
Sure.
to.
Yeah, actually.
This is specifically referring to the state of Israel. He said, "Let there be no misunderstanding in discerning mind on this point. The gathering of the Jews to their homeland and their organization into a nation and kingdom is not the gathering promised by the prophets."
But that's fine. The gathering of Israel is just bringing people to Christ.
right.
Exactly. What he's saying is that the nation state of Israel should not be conflated with gathering Israel, and that rather it's just basically an ethnic outcrop founded by secular Jews to protect their own. Okay, that's
Free.
fine.
So
But
what
it's
I see
not-
what you're saying there.
It's not, but it's not the biblical concept of Israel.
Yeah, it's okay. I do think that they have rights to that land. And I love this conversation because people are like, oh, well, America's stolen land. Okay, well, this place is stolen land. Israel is stolen land. It's like you do realize that at some point everyone has stolen land from everyone, right? It's like
We didn't
Mexico
steal
stole land from the natives that lived here. And that's how they got so far north. And
Yeah.
then we won the land back from
The
them in
12
war.
tribes took it from the Canaanites. So, yeah.
That's what
every,
happens. That's
Right.
how the world works.
It has
Yeah.
happened since the very beginning of time.
That doesn't
So-
mean we should let it happen.
so-
let the immigrants come over.
So
No,
show me a
defend your
map.
country.
Show me a map from the original, like 10 years after society existed, and we'll restore all of the nation's boundaries to those lines.
That would suck.
And guess what? It would suck because you'd have people of different cultures. Do you realize that's what happened in Africa? Europe basically just decided we're gonna Ethiopia. Okay, here we go. And then there's these tribes that get cut in half. Their boundaries, they're spliced by a national boundary, or tribes that are warring agents against each other for hundreds of years are now put in the same country. And that's part of the reason Africa has been so unstable and has been so chaotic is because of Europe not understanding their cultures. Like it should have just been a continent and let the tribes work themselves out.
Yeah.
But they didn't think about that. They were occupying land.
Can I just say one last thing, and then I guess we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, sure.
I do think it's worth mentioning, albeit a little briefly, that I think what the Israeli military has done to the people in Gaza and the West Bank is pretty messed up. The death toll is officially now 71,000. That was accepted by the IDF, I believe, a couple days ago in Gaza.
So they're admitting that they've killed 71,000
Israel's admitting that?
civilians.
Yes, that came out this week, though.
Could you send me that article? Like some
Yeah.
article that talks about that?
I
for me
got
to
it
see
from
the
Al
IDF
Jazeera, but it's also other places.
Okay, well, as long as it's something that the IDF has actually admitted to, like that's the type of proof that I'm talking about. We literally just had Jeffrey on the show, and that's what we had a discussion and kind of an argument about is just I don't know
All
who to
because we
trust.
said if.
I have always had the policy.
If
So, for instance, if Trump
If.
comes out tomorrow and is like, I admit I was on the Epstein files, I'd be like, well, dang. I guess he was. Like, you don't really have to argue with that. Like, maybe there's cases where someone is admitting guilt in duress. But for the most part, like, if Palestine or Hamas was like, yeah, we've been, raping Israeli citizens whenever we attack them, like, then you kind of know, okay, they were doing that.
yeah.
If Israel is saying we have killed 71,000 civilians. And the specific fact that, for instance, we have problems in the Middle East of civilians involving themselves in terrorist acts, of putting bombs on their chest and blowing up 10 soldiers. So you do have to be aware that there's a completely different culture and dynamic going on over in those regions. But given if it is 71,000 targeted and innocent civilians, you automatically lose my support.
That's just the death toll, but the vast majority of it is women and children.
Non-aggressor. They're not. They weren't attacking the IDF.
Are we sure about
disturbing.
that part though?
Well, if the IDF is admitting it, that's what I'm saying.
Well, if the IDF
that's kind of case.
If the IDF
case
does
closed.
say,
They
we
say
went
the
and
death
killed
toll
these
is
people for no reason.
71,000. The majority of it is non-combatants. That also includes.
Well, like Devin was
terrorists,
saying,
and I
there
guess
is
they
a
don't-
different culture there.
That's crazy.
Of being involved.
But yeah, I believe
please do send that to me.
I believe
That'd
it
be
is
an
too.
interesting read.
I believe it's too lopsided. Too lopsided for it to be fairly said that like, hey, they're just in a war. It's more like, oh, hey, that was a little too much.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm not okay with them just slaughtering civilians. That's been the thing the whole time. So please do send that to me.
Yeah.
I wanna see this
And then
for
you
myself.
send it to me because if that's true, forbid I say
Yeah,
if,
but my main
I'd like
point,
to see
my
that.
main point is basically the West is failing because of ourselves, and Israel is just another example. But it's the biggest example of how not favoring our own can be destructive for us.
So
but that's just my main point.
Like, I will always stand behind. They do not deserve genocide. That also goes for people in Islamic countries, though. Like, even though I vehemently disagree with the extremist cells and stuff like that, they don't deserve to be wiped out. So that goes for Jews. So anyone that's wanting to say they want to kill Jews, you are a terrible person. Anyone that's wanting to say they're going to kill all the Muslims, you're a terrible person. All the Palestinians, you're a terrible person if you want to kill all of them. So, like, the moment that Israel is talking about, oh yeah, we've killed 71,000 Jews and not Jews, I'm sorry, Palestinians, and we want your money, America. You've just got my even more impassioned support of keep that money here. Don't give that money to.
I'm with you.
We're
I'd
not
like to read
funding
that.
genocide. That's not okay.
Yeah. Well, I got the answer, guys. It's Jesus.
Yes.
If they were all Christian, it'd be way easier to
Why can't
solve
every
this.
guest
Well,
say that,
and
bro? Oh my
specifically,
gosh.
if everyone that does call themselves Christian actually lived in a Christian way.
Carson Beck.
But
Is he in your band?
No, that's my other boy Carson. Carson Beck. The boys are gonna love this one. He was a college football quarterback.
What the heck?
Played in the championship just a few days ago, and he got exposed from he was trying to ask girls for nudes on Snapchat and stuff.
Oh.
So that came out.
Patriot. No, I'm just kidding.
And then during the football game, he had crosses in eye black under his face. I'm like, what a hypocrite.
That is insane.
The reason why the boys, my friends, are gonna love that is because they told me about that as the game was going on. I got no ball knowledge on that, and they were telling me about it like halfway through the game, and I just started hating on them the rest of the game. They thought it was hilarious, but
that's sad because that gives a bad name for Christianity.
that's stupid. I don't think he's professing to be a Christian. Lots of people do the cross thing as like a style thing, but still, don't mock the cross, bro.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
You don't see me with Buddha on here when I'm playing a football game. Like, leave me alone.
While you're like desecrating Buddhist statues.
Yeah,
But I think that's the best way to end it.
Yeah, I
love
agree.
it, bro.
Genocide
Jesus is the answer.
Genocide is bad. Jesus is the solution.
and Carson Beck lost.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks
You
for
heard it
having
here.
me on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for letting me say my piece.
I love what you said, bro. It's awesome
We,
stuff.
we absolutely needed this conversation. I think America needed this conversation, and I hope that people get to watch this and they feel understood. They feel like their opinions, got represented in this through our different views and conversations, and maybe their views were challenged and they were able to learn something new.
Yeah, and also to the audience, these guys are nice. They brought me to talk about. So.
We went to talk about before this.
Be
It was
nice.
tough.
Be nice.
I think if you guys agree, disagree, go ahead and comment. But I think we've seen a cool dynamic of, jumping onto the other side of political opinions and agreeing with them without adopting the whole entire other side. So if that happened with you while watching this, just let us know, show the world that, we can, hop on both sides, but not necessarily have to adopt everything that one ideology believes. I think truth is truth no matter where it is. So,
or who it comes from.
Yep.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. As you know the role, if you have any comments, comment down below, hit that thumbs up, subscribe button, notification bell, share with your friends, and don't forget, we've got our Patreon on the top right-hand part of your screen. Go ahead and subscribe to our content. We're going to be releasing some new specials that are Patreon subscriber only. Check it out. Take care.